Safety Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Ansello,
Here.
Mr. Baroff, Ms. Boyce, Mr. Howland, Mr. Willie Lightfoot is excused, Mr. Marionetti, Mr. Michike, Mr. Morelli, Mr. Yolovich.
Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
There's not.
Is there anyone present who's not signed up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? Okay. At this time, I'd like to invite Robert Franklin, Chief Financial Officer, to come up and present the proposed 2016 Monroe County operating budget as it pertains to the Public Safety Committee. Thank you.
I loaded it up. It says public safety, right? Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you the 2016 Monroe County budget. I'd like to start with an overall, put the budget in overall context. Monroe County's proposed 2016 budget is just about $1.174 billion. That represents about a $7.9 million decrease from the 2015 adopted budget. The largest part of our budget, the operating budget, is proposed at $999.2 million, which is about $5 million lower than the 2015 adopted budget. Overall, Monroe County's 2016 budget will maintain a tax rate at $8.99 per $1,000 of full value. The budget reduces headcount by about 3.75 full-time equivalents. It reduces the county's mandated spending by about $5 million and complies with the Taxpayer Protection Act of 2007. Since there are a couple new members in the room tonight, I'd also like to say that since the issue comes up from time to time, there were no changes to our definition of what constitute a mandated service. The areas of Monroe County pertinent to this committee would include our Office of the Sheriff, our Department of Public Safety, our Office of the District Attorney, and our Office of the Public Defender. And I've compared for you on this slide the amended budget for 2015 versus what is proposed in 2016. Within our Office of the Sheriff, appropriations, total gross appropriations aren't all that much increased, a couple $100,000. Revenues obviously show a slight decline, thereby requiring a small increase in net county support. At a division level, our Office of the Sheriff, I present their divisions. You will find these in the budget book, both on the summary page, and each will have their own detail page. I will comment, probably not surprising, Office of the Sheriff, about 78% of their overall appropriations are related to salary and benefit costs. Very labor-intensive office. Just a few of the highlights that you'll see from the 2016 budget book, things going on in the Sheriff's Office, certainly not all of them. They will be renovating their mounted patrol unit building for both structural and electrical improvements. They're going to be replacing their remote operated underwater vehicle, which is used by their scuba team. They are working with our own DES on the design of an expansion of the jail visitation and our city court holding cells. And somewhat topical, not just here but around the country, body cameras. Our Office of the Sheriff will be developing and implementing a policy and set of procedures for the use of body cameras by their road patrol. And They also are initiating, or they have initiated and will be completing an upgrade to their records management system. It's a little bit more than a records management system, but it's called iLeads. Within our Department of Public Safety, again, appropriations are slightly down from the 2015 amended budget, as are revenues, requiring a small increase, small is relatively speaking, in their net county support. Public safety, they have a lot of divisions. This would become a very small font if I tried to present them all. I'd like to give you a flavor, however. Their three largest division, 911 Emergency Communications, up a little bit from last year, just over $20.3 million. Their Office of Probation and Community Corrections, not quite $18 million appropriations budget. And Public Safety Communications, this is like the radio communications, not quite $15 million. Again, department as a whole, pretty labor intensive, not quite as much as the Office of the Sheriff. About 60, oh, I'm sorry, I was going to make a comment on personnel services. My comment really, these three largest divisions are 68% of the overall department's budget. Just to give you a flavor of what's going on within the Department of Public Safety, again, somewhat topical. The Fire Bureau is currently developing a training program and a set of procedures to use when responding to incidents involving crude oil. They're actually working with New York State, I forget the acronym, Office of Fire Control or Office of Fire Protection, on actually having our response unit be available on a regional basis, so perhaps not just Monroe County. Our emergency communications and New York State are jointly working on the automated secure alarm protocol. This is a new system that when the alarm rings at a building, data goes directly to 911. And that data can directly link to our computer-aided dispatch system, requiring no human intervention. That's actually going to be a time saver, and not that there's a lot of errors going on in 911, but would pretty much eliminate any human error in that data transmission. And last but certainly not least, and again, just to give you a flavor of Department of Public Safety, we do have a crime lab. It's a regional crime lab, and they are partnering with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration actually to provide local law enforcement agencies with more detailed drug trending information. Last year you had a referral come before this body regarding synthetic drugs, bath salts. This is the kind of data that needs to be monitored, measured, and trended for a variety of law enforcement agencies. Within our Office of the District Attorney, again, I present to you appropriations revenue. Appropriations slightly reduced from the 2015 amended budget as our revenues, requiring a somewhat increase in net county support required. Net county support required for 2016 is a little more than $13.8 million. Like the Office of the Sheriff, a very labor-intensive office. About 86% of their appropriations are for salaries and benefits. And again, a little flavor of what's going on within the District Attorney's Office. You'll see in the budget book, they support the GIVE initiative. It's the Gun-Involved Violence Elimination. It used to have a different name. I'm drawing a blank on it, but that's okay. We'll come up with it later. Impact? Project Impact? Yes, Project Impact. Okay, new name. Again, they partner with local agencies on this. And they provide evidence-based policing to target offenders who are likely to commit gun-involved crimes. The District Attorney's Office is also supporting Project Step Up. That's in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, a little something else that's topical right now. Helping at-risk youth resist peer pressure to get involved with gang activities or crimes involving guns or drugs. And certainly one of my favorites within the District Attorney's Office, their Crimes Against Revenue Prosecution Program, prosecuting individuals and businesses that fail to pay sales tax and other taxes, and to actually recover taxes that are owed, specifically to Monroe County. And with our Office of the Public Defender, Again, presenting to you overall appropriations, revenues, and that county support required. Again, like a lot of areas that you're going to see in the budget book or hear from me in presentations, the 2016 budget looks reduced from the 2015 amended. We talk about this each year for those of you who are somewhat new. All these referrals that we put in front of the legislative body throughout the year amends our budget. So when we accept a grant and amend our appropriations, that pops up this year in the amended column. And you're not necessarily going to see that in the 2016 proposed. You will see it when a referral comes before you in several months to accept a new grant. So while a lot of these appropriations look reduced, just remember that little caveat that there's some grants out there inflating last year's numbers, but not the proposed numbers. Office of the Public Defender, I think like the Office of the District Attorney, all their services are 100% mandated. And like the DA's office and sheriff, it's a very labor-intensive organization. About 87% of their appropriations are for salaries and benefits. Something new for the Public Defender's Office this year was going to a 24/7 arrangement for counsel at first appearance. This has been discussed a number of times, not just locally, but in every county across the state as a result of a lawsuit that was settled in 5 other counties, but because the practices are relevant, we need to get ahead of that curve. So the Office of the Public Defender are going to monitor their system that they put in place for providing counsel at first appearance to try and always continually identify opportunities for improvement. And you may not know, and I wanted to put this up here, they actually continually develop, revamp, upgrade, continuing legal education programs locally here for the defense community. Mr. Chairman, with that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thanks again, Mr. Franklin. And are there any questions? Legislator Yolovich.
Mr. Chairman, on page 499, the Public Defender's budget line, I noticed that the overtime amount has dropped about $100,000. Could somebody elaborate on the reasoning for that?
Mr. Chairman, that reduction you see on page 499 is largely attributable to grants. There's a little over $2 million in grants that are included in the amended budget for 2015 that you're not necessarily going to see in the proposed budget for 2016. Two things there. As I commented in my presentation, you may see referrals come to you throughout the year that will increase the budget number. But I also want to refresh your memory that the Public Defender's Office and several departments throughout the county are seeing more and more multi-year grants from New York State and the federal government. We actually have the ability now in our accounting software, SAP, to program those grants. If it's a 2 or 3 year grant, if it's a 3-year grant, we have the ability in SAP to tell it in advance how much money is allocated to years 1, 2, and 3. So you're not necessarily going to see those in the proposed numbers for 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
Any further questions? Legislator Boyce.
Yes, through the chair. First, under the highlights, Mr. Franklin, could you tell me, with regards to the highlight noted, complete design phase for the Jalvezix expansion and the city court holding cells, can you give me a little bit more detail on that as to where the fundings come from? Is there a share that is going to be given by the city of Rochester?
Mr. Chairman, those are capital-related projects,
Okay,
and you have not yet seen a referral before you for that, but just wait a little bit, and that will be before you shortly.
okay. And through the chair again, can you tell me, under the sheriff's budget and under the highlights, if you would, probably directed to somebody from the sheriff's department, as we roll out and develop a policy and procedure for the use of body cameras, can you tell us if we're going to have public hearings for the public? Well, that was redundant, but are we going to have public hearings?
Mr. Chairman, currently we have a body camera pilot project in effect right now. We're going through a year test phase with the devices, and then we're going to reevaluate. But at this time, there's no plan for such thing.
Okay. Thank you. And one more question I have at this time. With regards to the public safety budget under the Office of Probation, which this is going to drive me nuts here. Can you tell me who's here from the probation department? Is anybody here from probation? Oh, yes. Okay. I just was curious with regards to probation department, if there are vacancies and how many vacancies there might be in the probation department budget. Bless you.
Mr. Chairman, we can probably follow up on that question. I just want to put out there for the legislators that when we look at vacancy or produce documentation around vacancies, it's a point in time only.
Okay.
And I just don't have real-time data, so it's hard for me to account for vacancies that have already been approved to fill and perhaps are currently in the interview process, or I also don't necessarily know about retirements that have already been announced that may take effect in a week or two. So I just want to put that caveat out there that they're point in time and may not provide as much use as you think they might.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Legislator Barath.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, I have a couple of questions about the Public Defender's Office. I want to start with what was mentioned in the presentation, which is the 24/7 availability for first appearances. And I know that then the major accomplishments was listed as doing over 9,000 defendants were represented, or at least had that experience. How much of an increase in the number of first appearances served does that represent, if this was the first time for 24/7 coverage?
Through the chair, Tim Donaher, Public Defender. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Regarding the 24/7 availability for first-time appearances, this is a new program, and it was stated in the major accomplishments that there were over 9,000 defendants who received this counsel. My question is, how much of that was due to the 24/7 nature of the coverage as opposed to past years where there was no 24/7 coverage?
Through the chair, functionally all 9,000 of those defendants in years past, a similar number of defendants did not have counsel at their first appearance or their arraignment in town and village courts. So all 9,000 of those defendants received representation for the first time.
Thank you, that makes sense. And then through the chair of the administration, when was the 24/7 coverage initiated?
Through the chair, it was actually initiated in 2 stages. The first stage was an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. coverage 7 days a week that began last February. And then we rolled out the 24-hour coverage to provide, obviously, representation from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., 7 days a week at the beginning of the year.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Could you clarify? You said you had the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. coverage starting February.
Oh, I'm sorry, through the chair, February of 2014.
Thank you much. January, New Year. Okay, thank you. And then through the chair of the administration, still talking about Public Defender's Office. If you were to go to page 221, it's talked about the cost of personnel services basically dropping approximately $1.1 million. And I know that according to the budget proposal, is 4 new positions. I'm wondering how this can be that we have 4 new positions but a decline in the personnel services costs, as well as the employee benefits costs.
Through the chair, that's all attributable to, as Mr. Franklin said, the Public Defender's Office receiving 3-year grants. Some of those years aren't reflected in the 2016 proposed budget, the funding for that.
Thank you. I had a feeling that might be the answer. Then through the chair of the administration, regarding on page 526 with the appropriations, the rental of space on page 526 is about $296,000. Is this all for the space in the executive office building?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And then apparently the rent expense is up about $43,000 or 17% since 2014. Is there any particular reason why that's the case?
Through the chair, that was due to when we renegotiated the 5-year lease term 3 years back. It called for a no increase in years 1 and 2, and then a phased-in increase in years 3. And as a result of both an increase in the amount of space that the Public Defender's Office received, as well as some improvements made to the space.
Thank you. And through Chair of the Administration, a short follow-up. Will we be experiencing additional rent increases in years 4 and 5 of this agreement?
Through the chair, I believe that the amount that we're currently paying will be the same in years 4 and 5, but I'd have to confirm that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Legislator Morelli.
Chairman, I have a couple questions related to the District Attorney's Office. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go over some of the objectives as well as accomplishments. As I look at the 2015 major objectives, there were a couple items that the District Attorney highlighted, including new opportunities for community interaction and involvement, and offering individuals who receive tickets for distracted driving an opportunity to attend a 4-hour course. Neither of those items are referenced in the 2015 major accomplishments. So my question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the District Attorney's Office is how has the District Attorney made herself available to the community, being as those were one of her 2015 objectives, and what is the status of the 4-hour course that was an objective of hers in 2015?
Through the chair, I'd first like to talk about the 4-hour course. I'm not sure what the answer to that question is. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Is that through you, Mr. Chairman? Is that something we could have in writing from the District Attorney?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you.
And then, can you please repeat the question regarding the availability of the district attorney?
Certainly. In the 2015 major objectives, the District Attorney included new opportunities for community interaction and involvement. And so in the 2016 budget, it references the 2015 major accomplishments, of which there was no discussion on that being one of the accomplishments. So my question was, how is it that the District Attorney has made herself available to the community?
Through the chair, I'll have to take a look at the 2015 budget and then consult with the DA and get back to you on that.
Perhaps we could have that in writing, or if the district attorney could come and address us, perhaps she could talk about her involvement in the community over the past year. Continuing on in the items with the district attorney's office, the 2016 budget, page 376, the performance measures for the victims witness unit are showing decreases. Can you explain to us why that is?
Through the chair, 2014 was an unusual year because that was a year that Officer Pearson was shot, and we saw an increase in the number of witnesses that the Victim Witness Bureau worked with, and we did not use that case as far as estimating for future years.
Thank you. Continuing on, page 515, the Central Administration Account 504305. Preparation of legal transcripts has gone from just over $6,500 in 2014 to now $135,000 in 2016. Can you explain why the such a large increase within the past 2 years?
Through the chair, if there's a field that your child would like to go into to make a lot of money, I would recommend they be a transcriptionist. A lot of
Good to know.
a lot of the court transcripts that are court ordered, and so we have no choice but to pay the bills that are sent to us by transcriptionists for records of what have gone on in court. The other things that have happened that can account for this increase is that interviews that are done by the police are recorded, and then those need to be transcribed to be provided to the attorneys and to the court. And that costs a lot of money.
As a follow-up, are those new requirements that, it seems like a relatively radical change in just a couple of years. Are there new requirements that have made this, that would account for the increase?
Through the chair, no.
Okay. On that same page, professional services has gone from $54,678 in 2014 to $216,000 in 2016. Could you explain why that drastic increase?
Through the chair, there have been an increased number of trials over the past several years, and the professional services line pays for expert witnesses, and also things that expert witnesses can do, such as types of DNA testing that can't be done by our local crime laboratory, or document examination. There's different exams that can only be done if we pay for the testing.
Thank you. Moving on, retirement costs I see have gone from $109,000, just over $109,000 in 2014 to $313,000 in 2016. I would suppose that it's an increase in those retiring, but are there additional costs associated with retirement that would note for the drastic increase?
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, the difference you're going to see in some departments in this budget book reflects a difference how we budget for retirement, where we retirement is based on a percentage of salaries and then where that position works in their department, versus how we actually allocate the cost of our pension contribution. It's important financially to allocate our pension contribution to where the departments get reimbursement. And we spread our amortization of our pension contribution to those departments that tend not to get reimbursement. So you will see some differences, for example, in the district attorney's office, where a budget for retirement is based on a percentage of salaries. But if you jump back to 2014 and see a different number, lower, it's reflective of the fact that the district attorneys doesn't get reimbursement for that. So a greater portion of our amortization went to the district attorney's office. Those departments that get reimbursement received less amortization, therefore more expense.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, it has more to do with how the money is allocated versus the individual department, is what you're saying. Is that correct?
Yes, allocation of the actual expense.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, a few other questions. I see that there has been a significant increase in temporary help, number 501005, from 11,000 to 108,000. Is there a reason that this drastic increase is being anticipated?
Through the chair, in last year's budget, our part-time employees were budgeted as though they were half of a full-time employee, which included benefits. And this year, instead of budgeting them as half of a full-time, I budgeted them for them in the temporary help line, which means that it doesn't show any benefits for them.
Is that the same case then in the increase of temporary help for the grand jury administration as well as temporary help in Special Victims Trial Division?
Through the chair, yes.
Now, the way you've calculated how those line items, or how you budget that, is that a change just within the office, or is that a change in requirements by the state?
Through the chair, that was a change just within the office.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the District Attorney's Office for answering those questions. I do have questions pertaining to the Sheriff's Office now, if we could move to that. I'd like to again go over some major accomplishments versus major objectives. I'm looking through the major accomplishments of the Sheriff's Office. They did not include the following: design and construction of physical security barriers at the county public safety building, construction, completion, and relocation to a new Zone A substation, selection of design consultants for conversion and renovation of the city public safety building, third floor inmate housing. Those were all included as objectives in the 2015 budget. So my question is to the Sheriff's Office, what is A, the status of those items, and B, why is it that those were not completed in 2015 as they were a part of the 2015 objectives in the 2015 budget?
Mr. Chairman, could I request the question get broken down into parts? We deal with one objective at a time.
Certainly. The first one is design and construction of physical security barriers at the county public safety building. Again, it was included in the 2015 objectives, but not part of the 2016 budget's 2015 major accomplishments.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're going to have to get back to you on the results of the 2015 objectives when we're prepared to answer those tonight. We can provide results in writing if you submit each element you're interested in.
Well, I'll give them again to you, and perhaps you could have the sheriff submit those to us in writing. Design and construction of the physical security barriers at the county public safety building was one. Construction completion and relocation to a new Zone A substation was two. Selection of design consultants for conversion and renovation of the public safety buildings, third floor inmate housing was three. So there are three items. So perhaps you can ask the sheriff to provide response to those items in writing.
Mr. Chairman, I can easily respond to question number 2, the Zone A substation.
Okay.
The search continues for acceptable land locations. We had a project in place that the site selected is no longer suitable, so we had to continue that process and start over. We're still working on that.
Thank you. Do you have any update then for us on the city public safety building, third floor inmate housing? Any update for us on that?
Mr. Chairman, that's a capital project that's being amended.
Capital project, I'm sorry, the capital project is being amended. Is there any update to what the status is of that project?
Mr. Chairman, I can't provide you an update yet because the CIP is still being amended due to cost.
Okay. And then, so obviously then the only question that, well, would like the sheriff to respond to that in writing, and then the design and construction of the physical security barriers at the county public safety building, that you'll provide to us in writing, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Thank you. Moving on, one of the, let me take a look here, see what I want to ask you. Page 532, 504340, rental of space has increased from 471,000 to 533,000. Why is it that the police bureau needed an additional $62,000 in rental space?
Mr. Chairman, that's due to the delays in selecting a new Zone A substation. We had to extend the lease for the current substation. It reflects an increase.
Gotcha. Okay. On that same page, contractual services for equipment decreased by 89% between 2014 and 2015. It then has increased 92% from 2015 to 2016. Is there a reason behind these drastic changes from year to year?
Mr. Chairman, can you reference a specific line number?
Sure. Page 532, 505040.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to follow up with specifics on that question.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure that this is, perhaps that you can answer this for us. Is there, with deputy union labor negotiations going on, is there any costs associated in the budget for those settlements, or is it moving forward? Has anything been allocated for that in the budget?
Through the chair.
Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the question pertains to the PBA.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, the interest arbitration award was released in its final form on November 10th. Frankly, Mr. Chairman, it is way too late to account for any decisions made in the 2016 budget process. We have assessed the impact of that interest arbitration. It will come with, I'm sure the deputies will agree, a modest adjustment to salaries. Those salaries will be reflected in the 2016 actuals. Since we did not budget for them, I'm not overly concerned, Mr. Chairman. Our county, including the Office of the Sheriff, has a history of having vacancies throughout the year that actually save us money. The Office of the Sheriff will be running several new recruit academies in 2016. The Sheriff does not hire a new recruit here and there. We will not have a hiring January 10th, February 1st, March 12th. Rather, the Office of the Sheriff has large groups of hiring for their academy. So there will be periods of times where deputy positions remain vacant, and we will take advantage of that salary savings to offset any payroll increase. I also happen to know that the interest arbitration award includes a, I'm sure management will consider it a modest increase in health insurance. Road patrol deputies used to pay a flat amount per pay period for health insurance contribution that has been converted to a percentage of the premium. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think the flat dollar amount equated to like a 8, 9, or 10% contribution. The interest arbitration award now comes with a 15% contribution to health insurance. So that increase will help offset additional costs due to salaries.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, overall, you don't think that it will have a massive impact on the sheriff's budget moving forward?
That would be my perspective, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, page 390 talks about the clearance rates for crimes. It's marked lower in zones A than in zones B and C. Is there any reason for for why those crimes are marked lower in those areas? Or, excuse me, clearance rates, through you, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, the clearance rates are very fluid numbers from year to year. They tend to not show a specific pattern. There was, from the 2015, actually, I'm sorry, 2014 years, the Zone B and a little bit of Zone C had a large burglary rate that resulted in several clearances. So Zone A reflected a lower amount.
Thank you. Retirement costs in the administration, the Civil Bureau, the jail, and in staff services are all doubling from 2014 to 2016. Can you explain why that is? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I will endeavor to figure out how to accommodate this 2017 budget, how we actually allocate our retirement costs. It's pretty much the same explanation I gave. It's the difference between budget and how we allocate the actuals.
Thank you. Page 532 and 534, overtime in the Police Bureau is 1.6 million, and in the jail is 2.1 million. Is there a reason for the large amounts of overtime that are being presented in the budget?
Mr. Chairman, the overtime is commensurate with the staffing plan. So I believe if your question is why is the jail bureau overtime budget almost twice as much as the police bureau, it's because of the sheer number of staff members and vacancies that they have to cover.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, would that indicate then that we're understaffed in those areas?
Mr. Chairman, we routinely experience understaffing, especially within the jail bureau. As Mr. Franklin mentioned, we can't hire as soon as a vacancy comes up. We have to wait till the academy classes are present and hire off of those vacancies that actually exist.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, this is, I would suppose, to Mr. Franklin then, would we then have an would we be saving more money essentially if we increase the staff sizes because we're not paying the overtime? Would that be accurate?
Mr. Chairman, the staffing costs also include the fringe benefits and the retirement benefits that would offset that. So to make a significant change in the overall staffing level, we don't feel would be fiscally responsible.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, page 696, the line item 410205, miscellaneous revenue. What is the source of that miscellaneous revenue of $342,400?
Mr. Chairman, those reflect contributions for employee parking costs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then my final question on the sheriff, page 784. There's a list of personnel of which at least 10 positions are related to vehicle maintenance. Why hasn't the vehicle maintenance been consolidated with the county's other fleet maintenance operations as to achieve economies of scale? Is there a reason behind that? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, these positions are specifically assigned to work on law enforcement vehicles that require a specific background investigation through the hiring process and what we believe is a higher level of accountability. We do share certain services and bulk ordering of products and things like that, but as far as actual employee hiring, we separate that due to the investigation process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Legislator Boyce?
Yes, through the chair, I have a question with regards to one of the highlights at the DA's office. Can you tell me where the Boys and Girls Club are going to be able to hold those activities while they're under renovation?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to ask that question be repeated.
Yes, through the chair. Could you tell me, in the highlights of the district attorney's office, they have the support the Project Step Up in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. So I guess I'm just wondering where a location will be held while the renovation is being done to the Boys and Girls Club.
Through the chair, Project Step Up is a summer program, and I'm not sure when the Boys and Girls Club renovation is projected to be done. So I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Legislator Barath.
Through the chair of the administration, I want to ask a few more questions about the sheriff's office, if I may. On page 382, under the major accomplishments, they talk about the increasing the federal inmate revenue through increasing reimbursement rates and such. But on page 392, it's not clear to me where these are actually reflected. Could you tell me, through the chair, which line or which appropriation reflects the federal inmate revenue funds on page 392?
Mr. Chairman, the revenue is included in the Jail Bureau federal aid line.
Thank you. And through the chair, what would that come under then by object?
Mr. Chairman, revenue 403025 would be the line.
4030.
On page 696, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Through the chair of the administration, I'm moving to page 394 under performance measures. I did have a question regarding the decline in participants receiving diplomas in 2015. Why do we expect a rebound in 2016?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have an explanation for the projected increase at this time. I'll have to get back to you.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. Then, additionally, on page 394 as well, there was also a significant decline in my right reading from the inmate work program participant hours, from 33,000 hours approximately to about 24,000 hours approximately. Is there a reason for that decline, or at least participation hours?
Mr. Chairman, that item is also very difficult to forecast and project. I'll have to get back to you on specific reasons why we projected that increase.
Thank you. Then through the chair of the administration, on page 397 regarding another performance measure, it just talked about basically a rather significant surge in training hours for the jail bureau. I mean, I think that's a good thing, but was there a particular reason for that increase in training hours?
Mr. Chairman, yes, due to the projected vacancies and the turnover in the jail bureau, we'll have to run. Actually, the first academy will cross the calendar year, and then we'll have 2 more academies during the year 2016. So the increase in academy training hours is the result of that.
That makes sense. Thank you. And then finally, for the Sheriff's Office, on page 532, other expenses, that's item number 504625. I went from about 17,000 in 2014 to about 70,000 in the 2016 request. What is this, and why the increase?
Mr. Chairman, the added expenses there, again, are reflective of the hiring process that we have to increase to fill vacancies. That reflects the added expense for the recruitment unit to conduct background investigations and similar items.
Thank you, that makes sense. Appreciate it. Then shifting gears, I'd just like to ask questions regarding the Department of Public Safety, if I may. Thank you. I'm going to start off with it's a broad question. I don't actually necessarily expect an answer today. However, looking back at last year's budget proposal, when they talked about the objectives, there were 9 of them, and only 2 of them were actually mentioned in the accomplishments this year. And whereas I can see where some objectives aren't accomplished, when you only get 2 out of 9, I think it's kind of challenging. So if the department has any explanation, I would appreciate that.
Through the chair, David Moore, Director of Public Safety. I will definitely check and find out what the status is and what it was in last year's budget concerning those objectives.
Thank you. Through the chair, can we have that in writing if at all possible?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you much. Then through the chair, regarding the conflict defender on page 259, I note that there's pretty much a $500,000 cost reduction in 2015 was achieved, or is being achieved. Are defense services being harmed at all by this reduction?
Mr. Chairman, there's probably 2 things going on related to that question. First, I would comment that the Conflict Defenders Office has roughly, I'm just going to call it $300,000 and change in the amended 2015 budget numbers that you're not going to see in the 2016 budget. I will also point out that the office has procured and will be implementing a electronic vouchering system for the assigned counsel program, and it is anticipated that use of that electronic vouchering system will result in lower assigned counsel costs.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, as a quick follow-up, the establishment of the electronic vouchering system, do we have an anticipated start time on that, or start date? Through the chair.
Through the chair, we just recently brought that initiative through this body, in front of this body, so we're hoping in the next few months.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, regarding the probation department, on page 260, it indicates that the revenue is down approximately $3 million. For what reason is that? Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman, that reduction in revenue is attributable, and I'm sure it's going to come up in another committee meeting. That revenue reduction is attributable to loss of funding from our Department of Human Services. In prior years, Department of Human Services used to contract with the Office of Probation to provide preventive services related to youth involved both with the criminal justice system and social services. It was budgeted in the past because New York State would provide 62% reimbursement to the department, so it really made sense. New York State has really cracked down, not just here, but all across New York State in any county that had endeavored such a system. New York State has cracked down on that and is not offering reimbursement any longer. for those services. The services are still being performed by the Office of Probation. It's just that the cost for providing that service is borne by probation and not human services.
Okay. That makes sense. Appreciate that. Through the chair of the administration, still with the Office of Probation, I note that regarding revenues, I have chargebacks to other departments of about $1.8 million, or $1.77 million, and charges to other departments of $1.2 million. What other departments are charged?
Mr. Chairman, Monroe County has a contract with U.S. Security Associates for security guards in county office buildings. We used to budget for that and pay for that in environmental services. It just made better sense for the Department of Public Safety to manage the security contract. We have security guards that are actual county employees who also are part of the Department of Public Safety. So we account for that contract cost within the Office of Probation. The charges to other departments reflect probation's charge for providing security services to the users of other county buildings.
That makes sense. Through the chair, for an example, can you give me an example?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For example, the Department of Human Services has security guards at Westfall Road and St. Paul Street. Those security guards are paid for under contract. The contract is budgeted for and managed by Department of Public Safety. So the Department of Public Safety calculates the value of those guards at St. Paul Street and Westfall Road and charges Human Services for that value.
Thank you. That makes very much. Thank you very much. The through chair of the administration, move on to central services. A question on page 262. There's an item called amount of under performance measures, an amount of supervision fees collected. What are these supervision fees, and why do we anticipate essentially a 40% increase into 2016?
Through the chair, we'll get back to you on that question.
Okay, thank you. Then on the same area, actually, on page 263, I also noticed that there's been a continued increase in community service hours ordered from $69,000 all the way up to $80,000. Well, I have nothing against that. I'm just curious, why do we anticipate such an increase heading into 2016?
Through the chair, we'll get back to you with that also, just so that we can be accurate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Still with probation, but I wanted to go back to page 499 for the appropriations under public safety probation. Line item, with account number 504205, commercial services, has increased over $1.3 million over the past 2 years. Why is that? And what is that, for that matter?
Through the chair, once again, that's all relative to the security contract going into public safety.
Okay. And then in 20, I note that in 2015, two officers were cut or the positions were eliminated. In 2014, we had 7 staff members be eliminated as well. So that's 9 over the past 2 years. I guess my question is, I mean, shouldn't this be an area where we're trying to actually increase staffing in regards to probation and making sure we don't have, well, call them incidents?
Through the chair, we had one position eliminated this year. That was 7, grade 7. Just for clarification, yes.
By this year, you're referring, through the chair, you mean 2015?
That's correct.
So one position. I'll defer to your knowledge. But through the chair to the administration, do we feel that, does the administration feel that we have the appropriate staffing for the probation department to successfully manage all the people with whom you work?
Yes, through the chair, we continue to look into utilizing such programs as electronic monitoring to offset those resources that we may be missing.
Okay, thank you. And then one final question on the probation department, and that's on page 499, and it's regards to the line 504335, rental of equipment. I actually went back in time and looked at 2013. It was only $64,000 back then, and it, it's peaked into $156,000 now. What sort of equipment are we renting, and has any sort of analysis been done to see maybe we should either purchase some of these equipment outright instead?
Through the chair, Ginny Satter, Public Safety. That actually is electronic monitoring equipment,
Okay.
and it's kind of specialized that you really can't purchase it and buy the whole system.
That makes sense. Thank you very much. And then just switching gears slightly for the Stop DWI Traffic Safety program, on page 501, there's an other expenses commit line 504625, and they pretty much increased from $6,000 up to $40,000. What are these other services? Through the chair.
Through the chair, these services include all kinds of brochures and different things that we purchase. We provide a dinner for the victims that speak at the Victim Impact Panel to thank them for their telling their stories. All kinds of a variety of things like that.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, I mean, for things like that, I could see $6,000 easily. I could even see, $10,000, $20,000 as an expense. We're getting up to $40,000. I mean, there has to be more to it than that. Is there anything else that would make up the bulk of those funds through the chair?
Through the chair, what happens when we do the Stop DWI budget is that it is approved by the Technical Advisory Panel, but it is commensurate with a projection of fines that come in from Stop DWI or from DWI offenders, and so that budget that's kind of a catch-all for everything. Now, when we don't spend that, it goes into a reserve account because it can only be spent on DWI-related things.
Okay, then through the chair of the administration, then the funds that go into this account aren't coming from, I guess, the county, I would say.
Through the chair, this is like a zero net because for Stop DWI specifically, it comes in from fines from offenders.
Right, so I'm fine with that. Thank you. And then one final question on the DWI traffic safety, and this, I suspect I know the answer now, but I just want to make sure. On page 266, there's a miscellaneous revenue of $297,000 for budget 2016 that was zero in 2015. What is that, through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, we are on page 266 of
Correct.
the Public Safety Communications
Yes,
Division.
my mistake, yes, I misread.
Mr. Chairman, the miscellaneous revenue represented on this page represents charges from our Public Safety Communications Division to the Local Development Corporation for our employee time spent serving that entity.
And that would be M3S through the chair,
More than likely, Mr. Chairman.
I would think. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Legislator Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some questions about public safety communications. On page 266, going back when the county signed a contract with M3S, it was negotiated that would include administrative costs for Navitec Corp. With Navitec being gone, has the M3S contract been amended to reduce the county's payments to M3S? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, no, it was not. There is a different mechanism negotiated through the bank. Rather than reduce the county's annual payment to M3S, M3S on a quarterly basis will be paying the county for any services, administrative services performed on behalf of M3S.
So let me clarify that. So since Navitec is no longer in part of that contract, the county now performs those administrative duties. M3S subsequently then pays the county for those services it would have paid Navitec. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that it was a negotiations with, or through the contract through a bank. Of which bank are you speaking of that this was?
That would be M&T Bank, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, page 503, account 504320. Line item has over $11 million, 11.4 million almost. Is that money that's being paid to M3S?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that represents our annual payment.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Chairman, why is it that that goes up about $500,000 every year?
Mr. Chairman, the annual schedule of payment for that contract is delineated in one of the exhibits to that contract. Anyone reading that contract could pull that exhibit and see what our annual payments are going to be this year, next year, and every year through 2029.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Legislator Barath.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, I do want to ask a few questions, well, actually one question about the Public Safety Mutual Aid Fire Bureau on page 508. There was a significant decline in funding for supplies, specifically from $233,000 in 2014 to about $84,000 in the 2016 request. What supplies are we no longer purchasing or require?
Mr. Chairman, the result of this decrease you see on this page is a result of grants being reflected in prior years and not the 2016 budget.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, that means we, via grant funding, we're able to acquire other supplies, and we no longer have that source nowadays, correct?
Mr. Chairman, either we no longer have that source, i.e. the grant went away, or this body will receive a referral at some point in the coming year.
That makes sense. Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, I suspect this is going to be the same answer. I want to make sure for Public Safety Crime Laboratory, there's also a very large reduction in the appropriations for supplies on 512, page 512, from $157,000 to $10,000 for chemical biological supplies. Is that for a similar reason through the chair?
It is, Mr. Chairman. That's the same response.
Okay. And then through the chair of the administration, regarding Public Safety Central Police, on page 507, there was a significant decrease in chargebacks from $363,000 to $62,000. What is the reason for this decrease in chargebacks?
Mr. Chairman, that change actually reflects a correction in the budget to mirror our actual process. Central Police Services incurs an expense for air cards, allowing police car MDTs to communicate electronically with internet servers. Prior budgets had reflected a chargeback for that. That does not happen, so we corrected the 2016 budget to reflect the fact that we don't charge that back.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, I didn't quite hear what you said. Did you say air cards?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
New to me. Okay, thank you. Wanna make sure.
Air cards. It's like a Verizon card you can plug into a USB port on a computer and wireless internet.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Showing my ignorance there. My apologies. Then through the chair of the administration, I'm going to move on to emergency management on page 257. And it's only regards the appropriation by division for that. I noticed that the appropriation basically went down by 50%. The budget was reduced. Is that indicative of anything in particular?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Can I get the specific line item being referenced?
Well, I'm on page 257, and in the budget summary, I just wanted to point out that there's the amended budget from 2015 was $1.4 million, and now the 2016 budget is like just under $800,000. And I was wondering why the budget was being reduced, and there's a reason for that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Emergency management has just over $1 million in grant funding included in the 2015 amended budget, not reflected in the 2016 proposed.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, we expect then, it's very likely then we'll probably get some sort of grant funding in addition to the $800,000, correct?
Mr. Chairman, this body will see referrals. One was just introduced and others will be coming. However, I can't say with 100% certainty that it will be the same dollar amount as in prior years.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, I understand that. The reason I was asking is because I noticed in the expected increases in the performance measures, we're expecting increases over the next year, and I just want to make sure there was a basis for that expectation, and clearly there is. And then finally, on page 510, there's a significant decrease in the salary line from $408,000 to $231,000. Am I correct to assume that has to do with grant funds that aren't quite yet available through the chair?
At the risk of sounding repetitive, Mr. Chairman, the 2015 amendment does include grant funding, not so reflected in 2016.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, I understand. I just wanted to make sure. I appreciate that. And then moving on, and this is the final area of my question, would be weights and measures. On page 276, essentially the statistics show a significant reduction in the number of inspections and devices checked and pricing accuracy items checked since 2014. Why the reduction or decrease?
Mr. Chairman, we're going to just look into that more closely and get a written response for the committee.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it. And through the chair, simply because otherwise the budget remains pretty static, but the actual performance seems to be going down. So that would be all the questions I have. Thank you.
Legislator Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a follow-up question in regards to the public safety communications. Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Franklin, you reference that M3S will pay the county for the services that no longer being done by Navitec. Do you have the amount that the county received in 2015 from M3S? And do you have a copy of the agreement showing that that's how the system will work now?
Mr. Chairman, we do have an agreement that reflects that arrangement. 2015, we bill on a quarterly basis, so we have not yet generated a bill for the fourth quarter of 2015, so I just want to throw that out there. Is the legislator requesting to see previous bills, or would...
Oh, yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, we would like to see a copy of the previous bills as well as a copy of the agreement that specifies that the county will now handle the administrative duties of M3S.
We have that information, Mr. Chairman.
And you can submit that to us in writing.
We will, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Chairman, where, I suppose, is the, in the 2016 budget, are we accounting for the services that we will be handling for M3S?
Mr. Chairman, is the question where in the budget is it accounted for?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, the charges to the LDCs for our administrative and other management work is billed, and the revenue will be reflected in the different departments that are providing the administrative services: Finance Department, the Law Department, Public Safety Department. Our budget reflects the revenue probably is miscellaneous income, Mr. Chairman.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, those are not identified based on the, essentially you don't separate those line items as performed services for the LDCs, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, there's not a discrete line, no.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the October 21st, 2015 minutes before you. They'll stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Yes, Legislator Yoder.
Considering the late hour, looking at our agenda, 90% or so of it is acceptance of grants for the with the exception of numbers 327, 329, 343, and 394. There is one in there that's a renewal of an annual firearms instructor amount that I didn't even count in here, but without objection and at the risk of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle laughing hysterically, I'd like to move those other items as one.
Is there a
without
second?
objection. On the ones that I mentioned or others?
On all of them, Jeff? I think we might as well just go through.
All right, let it go then.
Okay. First item, please.
Referral 15-0316.
Moved by Legislator Mitchkay, seconded by Legislator Boyce. Is there any discussion? Legislator Barat.
My question to the Chair of the Administration is, what sort of equipment are we purchasing?
Through the chair, the BOM team's going to receive PPE kits, metal detector unit, chemical detection unit, and remote access functioning tools for robots and robot maintenance.
Thank you. Through the Chair of the Administration, just as a follow-up, a PPE kit is what exactly?
Personal protective equipment.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next item, please.
Referral
Moved by
15-0317.
Boyce, seconded by Legislator Howard. Is there any discussion? Yes, Legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through the Chair of the Administration, Does the $60,000 grant cover all costs of the dog, i.e. food and shelter, or just the purchase?
Through the chair, just the purchase of the dog.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, how many K-9 units that have bomb detecting training do we currently have, if any?
Through the chair, 6.
6. So through the chair, this makes 7.
Through the chair, I believe 2 might be retiring, so depending on retirements, I don't believe we're going to be increasing, but it'll be 6 total.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, I assume we don't have to pay retirement benefits.
Through the chair, no, not for the K-9.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The item carries. And next item, please.
Referral 15-0318.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 15-0319.
Moved by legislator Marionetti and seconded by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? Yes, legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, do we know how many citations were issued by the sheriff deputies in the last mobilization period?
Through the chair, what mobilization are you talking? Because there's actually 2 in this grant. There's a general law enforcement or general tickets for aggressive driving, cell phone use, stop signs, and then there's Bunny, Buckle Up New York.
I actually meant the former, through the chair.
So Bunny?
No, the former. The aggressive driving one.
424 tickets.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, do we know what sort of revenue we got from that?
Through the chair, that wouldn't have anything to do with the grant. I wouldn't have that information.
Okay. Maybe we don't know. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 15-0320.
Moved by legislator Yolovich, seconded by legislator Michike. Is there any discussion? Yes, legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, how many live scans do we currently have in operation?
We have 8.
Okay. Thank you. And then through the chair of the administration, this is just simply to replace one of them, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. And next item, please.
Referral 15-0321.
Moved by legislator Boyce, seconded by legislator Holland. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. And next item, please.
Referral 15-0322.
Moved by legislator Michike, seconded by legislator Howland. Is there any discussion? Yes, legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, the referral says that this is a decrease of $12 from last year. Is that correct, or should that be $12,000?
Through the chair, that is correct, $12.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 15-0323.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 15-0324.
Moved by legislator Marionetti, seconded by legislator Yolovich. Yes, legislator Morel.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the administration, can we have a little explanation, a little more further detail as to what this $3.5 million grant is going toward?
Through the chair, this grant is specifically for 3 sites to enhance the radio system prior to moving public safety responders to the system. Right now, it's only being used by public service.
So, through your administration, I'm sorry, you said that this replaces current equipment?
The chair, it adds 3 sites, so it provides better coverage for a responder.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, the referral states that this is the second time we received this funding. Is this the same amount as previously received?
Through the chair, it's a little confusing because there's a statewide interoperable communications grant, but every year there's different criteria on each round of funding on what you can use it for. So our prior year was a little bit more, but it was more to interoperate with the surrounding counties.
Yes. Thank you. I recall that grant, actually. And through the chair of the administration, since this is a 2-year grant, and we're putting the entire amount of the grant towards the 2016 operating budget, am I correct to understand that approximately at least some amount of this would be encumbered for the 2017 budget year?
Through the chair, actually what we're doing is just accepting it right now to get the process of the contract moving with the state, because we don't want that to be held up with our January 1st start date of the grant, since it only is a 2-year period of performance. And what we're actually going to do, because it's a site, it actually has to do with what we're going to be doing on physical pieces of property. We're going to move, and with this dollar amount, we're going to move it into the capital fund, but we can't move it into the capital fund until we decide on the sites and get the seeker done. So you will be seeing a referral upcoming to move everything into a capital fund.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the item carries. And next item, please.
Referral 15-0325.
Moved by legislator Yolovich and seconded by legislator Michike. Is there any discussion? Yes, legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, what is the current backlog on DNA testing and such?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the current backlog in the DNA section is 450 cases.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, since we've been receiving this grant for, I think, 10 years, is that backlog lower now than it was 10 years ago through the chair?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't know about 10 years ago, but it is lower than last year.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any, yes, legislator Boyce.
To the chair, could you tell me, Mr. Clark, with regards to the backlog, what's the breakdown of the cases that those DNAs involve? If you have it. If you don't.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I do not have that information.
Can you get that for me?
I can get it to you, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the item carries. And next item, please.
Referral 15-0326.
Moved by legislator Michike, seconded by legislator Boyce. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the item carries. And next item, please.
Referral 15-0327.
Moved by legislator Boyce, seconded by legislator Holland. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 15-0328.
Moved by legislator Holland and seconded by legislator Marionetti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And opposed, the item carries. And next item, please.
Referral 15-0329.
Moved by legislator Marionetti and seconded by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion? Yes, legislator Barat.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, is this a new agreement?
Through the chair, it is a new agreement for existing equipment in both locations.
Thank you. Now, through the chair of the administration, do we have similar agreements with other entities, municipalities, schools, et cetera?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
Thank you. That's all.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 15-0330.
Moved by legislator Yolovich and seconded by legislator Michike. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 15-0343. Authorize a contract.
Moved by legislator Michike and seconded by legislator Boyce. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Last item, please.
Referral 15-0394.
Moved by legislator Boyce, seconded by legislator Howland. Is there any discussion? Yes, legislator Barat.
Through the chair of the administration, where is this structure?
Mr. Chairman, this structure is on St. Paul along the river near the Rochester Yacht Club.
Thank you. And then through the chair of the administration, what caused the project to go 50% over budget?
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat the question?
Yes, through the chair, what caused this project to go over 50% over budget? It went from 195,000 to about 545,000.
Through the chair, the original capital fund budget for this project was $350,000. That represented an estimate, I think, that dates back to 2012 fiscal year. The project's been delayed a number of years. Obviously, we've got escalation associated with the current bid environment. So we did our level best to try to design a project that was biddable with the funds in hand. However, the bid market obviously spoke on bid day and indicated that the project, as designed under the current economic climate, is substantially more than budgeted.
Thank you. That makes sense. Through the chair, one final question. You mentioned that it was delayed for a number of years, and clearly it was. Was this delay the result of choices, strategic choices made to put other projects to completion with a greater priority, or is it for some other reason that this project was delayed? Perhaps environmental concerns or something like that?
Through the chair, certainly there were other projects of higher priority. There's no issues with the site. There was some concerning environmental, I should say. There was some issues relative to property ownership that did require resolution, but just a function of other priorities.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Yes, legislator Boyd.
Yeah, through the chair, could you tell me, Mr. Kennedy, with regards to the breakdown of the funding for this project, how much of it is reimbursed by any other entities?
Through the chair, this is exclusively sheriff funding.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? Okay. As you may know, this will be the last Public Safety Committee meeting of this legislative cycle, and I'd like to acknowledge, well, two legislators, Legislator Yolovich and Legislator Lightfoot, who couldn't be here tonight. I'd just like to thank, it's been an honor to work with them over the past couple of years, and they've through their efforts, I think they've made our community a safer place. And I'd just like to thank them for their service, and we will miss them. Okay. There being no other matters, the November 16th, 2015 meeting of the Public Safety Committee stands adjourned, and the next meeting of the Public Safety Committee will be announced. There's no set date yet. So thank you very much.